So this is from the New York Times. Jussie Smollett, upset by his salary and seeking publicity, staged a fake assault on himself a week after writing himself a threatening letter. This is according to the Chicago police. The Empire actor surrendered to face a charge of filing a false police report today. Eddie Johnson, the visibly angry Chicago police superintendent, said Smollett had taken advantage of the pain and anger of racism, draining resources that could have been used to investigate other crimes for which people were actually suffering. Johnson said this, "I just wish that the families of gun violence in this city got this much attention." The superintendent seemed particularly upset by the fact that Smollett had arranged a fake assault that featured a noose hung around his neck. The police say the staged assault was carried out by two brothers to whom the actor had paid $3,500. Hi, I'm Michael Wan, your host for Michael Wan's Op-Ed Live, and this is our proud LA County Assessor, Jeffrey Prang. Our show Op-Ed Live is not about left or right, it's about right or wrong. So what say you, Jeffrey?
So there is simply nothing good about that story of Jussie Smollett. It is wrong in so many different ways. A young black gay actor played on people's worst fears, caused the police department to expend precious resources. He wanted to make himself famous. Well, he succeeded at that, but this will probably...
Infamy. Right?
The problem is this will probably be his last 15 minutes of fame. There's just no excuse, and they're going to take him to trial, and he may serve time in jail, and rightfully so.
I never heard of Jussie Smollett. I think he did get famous because now I finally knew who he is. He's a star for Empire. I never watched the show, but seems like a lot of people that I know watch that show. It seems like a popular show. I don't know what that show is about.
Right.
But I do think, he played to people's fear. And according to him, two black guys who were wearing a MAGA hat, they were screaming, "This is MAGA country," right? While beating him up, something like that. That's what he reported to the police. So I think he had this agenda to kind of, how do you say, attack his Trump supporters. That he wanted to show to the world that Trump supporters are these kind of racist bigots, and that's why I got attacked. I think that's the narrative that he wanted to play on, right?
He wanted to show that there was an anti-African-American bigotry, that there was an anti-LGBTQ bigotry, and that there was an anti-Trump bigotry. He was trying to say that this is what Trump people are, and he did it in just the most egregious way possible. And unfortunately, when you do that, you actually undercut the legitimate arguments that we're having as a nation on all of those issues by using it for your own personal gain. I can't think of anything worse. And you and I differ a little bit on that. I think the mainstream media kind of brainwashed a lot of people. But anyway, regarding this issue, he wanted to be shown to the people that he's a victim of hate crime, and by that he wanted to become famous, like a symbol of that. And then with that, he wanted to raise his salary, which he has been already paid $1 million, right? $1 million, that's 7 figures, right? I mean, I don't understand why he wanted to use this kind of method. I just don't understand this. It was profoundly selfish, and there are legitimate issues of homophobia and bigotry, and he undercut all of that and made it difficult for all the people fighting for justice. And as the chief of police said, they spent 1,000 personnel hours and pulled people away to investigate this particular case. Those are hours that could have been protecting other people in the streets of Chicago, and it was unfair, and it cost a lot of money and a lot of credibility. It was just, they're going to take him to court, and he should be punished to the fullest extent of the law.
And I think, like you mentioned, he used everything. Homophobia, racism, bigotry. He wanted to put that all in one so that he can get the maximum exposure.
And I can tell you that people who are trying to oppose the president on legitimate policy grounds, people who are advocates for African-American equality, people who are advocates for LGBTQ equality, they're all feeling the pain right now because they're saying he undercut their arguments.
And Personally, I think Trump is doing a lot even for LGBTQ community. I know a lot of people disagree with. I mean, he wanted to spread these messages to like Saudi Arabia and all these Middle East countries too, because they have been very harsh on those communities. It's like unimaginable. They just threw them out of the rooftops. You heard about those
of course,
things, right?
You could be homophobic in this country and still oppose throwing people off the rooftops. That doesn't mean that you're doing good things for the LGBT community.
Yeah,
maybe in Saudi Arabia, but I'm not sure.
But anyway, I believe that this is something that the mainstream media wanted. That's why even the superintendent today, Johnson, he criticized the media. He criticized the media for jumping right off the bat, that criticizing the gangs and criticizing these bigots rather than trying to get the facts straight. And also the 2020 Democratic candidates, they have all jumped to defend this guy. So the superintendent also, the Chicago police blasted the 2020 candidates, Democrats, including Kamala Harris and talk show host Ellen DeGeneres. I think he criticized every single one of them, and I think that was well done on his part.
The challenge we have living in a 24-hour news cycle is, Jesse Smollett. There was no reason to doubt his credibility when this began. He came forward and said he was bashed, and he had a story. It sounded reasonable. The whole thing he put together was not beyond belief. But but the problem is we all immediately go and go forward, and the media goes forward, and they tell that story, and everybody believes that story before the investigation's done.
Yeah.
And it was the investigation very quickly got to a point where there were huge holes, which cast doubt on his story, his unwillingness to share his phone, and particularly as soon as they discovered those two guys who were African American people who were tied to his show. At that point, we knew that there was something fishy.
Do you think his career is done at this point?
I would expect so. Maybe when he's done with his punishment, he might be able to go on an apology tour and get some redemption. But I suspect that he's going to be fairly toxic in Hollywood from now on. So. He didn't get. He got some fame. He didn't get the type of fame he wanted, and he probably undercut his ability to make money and be a Hollywood presence in the future.
So I noticed a lot of people deleted their tweets. They were all supporting him. I think Adam Schiff, congressman, representative, in LA, he also deleted his tweet about this whole incident.
But this is a problem we have in this country as a general. It doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left.
Yeah.
When whether it be Fox News reporting something or MSNBC, if they say something and it sounds believable, people immediately want that to believe that, particularly if it's in sync with their already predetermined world point of view. And then as more information comes out, then they may not report the contrary information, and people just retreat to the corners and.
Do you see some parallel between this incident and the Covington High School student incident in Washington, D.C., when all the media jumped and bashed him, pretty much, a high school student? He was just, I think he just took it in stride. He was just smiling, trying not to confront the Native American there, and the Native American kept hitting a drum in front of his face, and the media all jumped in. I remember Bill Maher, Rachel Maddow, Don Lemon, all these, James Tapper. They all criticized this kid about him smirking. Like it's supposed to be illegal for smirking or something. What should he have done? I think this is kind of like the same thing. They just jump the wagon.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think that's just another example. And we could probably look through the news on any given day and find other situations that are exactly like that, where they give a snapshot of something happening and people draw conclusions. I don't think they're exactly the same. I think that those kids were clearly being harassed by that one group. I can't remember what they're called. Something about Israel. Although that kid wasn't just innocently standing there with a guy coming up to him. He walked right up to that man. And
no, I don't think he walked it up. I watched the video. They showed full footage. I think the media kind of portrayed it that way. They did explain it that way. I saw the full footage of it. He was just staying there. Yeah. I think waiting for the bus, and it was him that and it's known that it was revealed that he didn't even go to Vietnam. He's not a Vietnam veteran, the Native American who
served. He's a Vietnam era veteran.
Yeah, he's a Vietnam era veteran, but he did not himself go to Vietnam, right? So
he's a soldier.
Yeah, so it was that guy who approached him. So I thought I see kind of like So that's why I told you in my show that I feel like the mainstream media has become nothing but a democratic propaganda machine because they always jump gun and just bash before they see the whole picture.
I don't think I would call that a democratic propaganda machine. That's the way the news works. The news reports things in snapshots. They don't think it all the way through, and that's neither Democratic or Republican. That's what they do to sell news, and that's not a partisan issue because the people who own the big major media are all Republicans.
Are they?
Yes,
I think they're Democrats.
Clear Channel and
okay, I would give you what Rupert Murdoch. I think he's a conservative, probably. But other than that, I don't think Les Moonves. I think he's a Democrat, and also ABC CEO, NBC CEO, CBS CEO. They're all Democrats.
But a lot of those companies are not just. Those are owned by larger corporations, which are more conservative. The one that owns the company that owns like a good portion of radio is Clear Channel, and Clear Channel is an extremely conservative company.
Okay, but like for instance, ABC. ABC is owned by Disney, right? Disney.
I actually don't.
Michael Eisner and all that.
I don't know the corporate ownership.
Yeah, it is.
But I know that NBC
is owned by General Electric, I believe. You know, or is
They're all owned by bigger companies.
Yeah, but I think
General Electric is a very conservative.
I saw a map about all the mainstream media. You know, like you said, if you go all the way to the top, it's pretty much 6 companies controlling the entire media.
Right.
You know, they own BuzzFeed and all that. You know, they all just have different names, but it's actually owned by the same company. And I found like probably Fox might be conservative, but other than that, the other 5. You know, tend to be leaning left, but I think we can probably debate this.
Yeah, I don't think they're conservative. I don't think they're democratic. I think they sell news, and I think they sell news that people watch.
But because a lot of commercial things going on.
The world of journalism has changed. They're selling time to keep people's attention. That's why people complain about local news and car chases. Car chases do not make you a more informed resident of LA City. Yeah. But that's when everybody tunes in. So what they do on the national news to keep viewership, to sell ads, are things that people pay attention to.
Yeah, it's like if there's a car crash on the highway, you just tend to, look at it. Right?
It's entertainment. It's not politics.
Yeah. So Covington's, the student name, I forgot his name. The Covington student, he sued Washington Post because Washington Post led that report. $250 million, and he hired a pretty famous lawyer. I forgot his name, Lynn Wood or something like that.
I can't remember the report. Right?
Yeah. So, what do you think about that situation?
I think it's ridiculous. I think those kids were blamed for a great deal more than they were responsible for. I don't think they were without blame. I think they did have. They could have. One thing that bothered me in watching the video is that the chaperones could have. Disarmed the conflict by simply leaving,
but he was just standing there, right? I mean, he was really just standing there.
Going back a little bit further. So the whole thing began when there's that group, that one group was taunting the kids, and instead of walking away and disengaging, the chaperones gave them permission to do school chants. And so then there became a back and forth between the two. Then the Native American who was there doing peaceful drum circling, thought that I presume in his mind, he thought he could be in the middle of it and diffuse the situation. So he came in and banged his...
And that's what he kind of said, right, the next day?
That's what he said. And so then the kids very clearly were, in my mind, were kind of mocking him because they were singing, doing mock Indian chants for him. And he just stood there doing the same thing. And that kid stood there in front of him and just sat there, and it was not a friendly hi, I'm nice to see you. It was a smirk.
Yeah, but
it was and he shouldn't have done that. He should have walked away as well. And the people who were to blame were those Covington chaperones who should have taken all those kids out of the way of that controversy. Instead, they seemed to feed it.
I think hindsight is 20/20. In the heat of the moment, I don't think people can really think that way, like objectively. Hey, we should back out. But according to that Vietnam vet guy, I mean, he's not even a Vietnam vet, but he said that he felt the atmosphere was kind of shifting from one to another. He felt the atmosphere was kind of a little bit hostile in the beginning, but later on, people kind of joined in with that Indian singing hymn.
Right.
So it all was good, but I believe the mainstream media was on the wrong side regarding this thing. I don't think it should have been that huge of a news. They kept playing it 24/7.
At the end of the day, it was not a news story.
It was not a news story.
It was a conflict like you would see in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
However, these types of racial conflicts and division are good for viewership. So they did what they're selling ads.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's where things really go wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, so let's move on to our next topic. So we finally have a new Attorney General, William Barr, and the Robert Mueller Special Counsel Trump campaign Russia collusion report will come out as early as next week, according to CNN. So what's your thought on this, Jeffrey?
Well, I'm glad that the Mueller has not said his report's coming out, but people on the inside seem to think it's close to being released. So I think the whole country will celebrate the conclusion of the Mueller investigation.
It's been long.
I'm a little concerned. I'm not an advocate for the new Attorney General. What I will say on his behalf, though, is he has worked within the establishment of Washington his whole career. So he's not one of these outlier, eccentric people that the president has often appointed. He works. I heard a Republican operative say this during the campaign 2 years ago. He said he plays in the same sandbox as everybody else. So I disagree. I disagree with a lot of them, but at least he operates under the same rules that most of us operate under. But he did say something that does concern me, because the report and its confidentiality will be his decision.
Yeah.
So
usually it is, right? The Attorney General's decision.
So he'll be able to decide what people see in that report. He may provide his own summary, but my concern is the Congress and, frankly, the public. We should see what's in that report unless national security is at stake. I think they owe it in terms of transparency and accountability to let us see what that report says. I'm concerned that he may not let us see everything in that report.
Okay. So, Jeffrey, we all know that you've been a critic of the Trump administration. You believe that there was some kind of collusion between Trump campaign and Russia. You do, right? What if the Mueller report says that there was absolutely no collusion between Trump campaign and Russia? And what if it actually says this whole thing started because of the Hillary Clinton Fed dossier, Trump dossier, Russia dossier, and also campaign people being spied on and all that? What if the Mueller report really actually says that whole entire thing? Would you accept it, that there was, if he says there was absolutely no collusion, can you accept that report, or you would not?
I would. Given the fact,
if Mueller, because it's going to be Mueller who's going to report it.
Given the fact that 8 people close to the president have already been indicted and are on their way to jail for having questionable relations with the Russians, it's hard to believe that they could come to that conclusion.
But it was a process crime. They were not involved in the Russia collusion. It was a process crime. Well, if a memory slipped and I didn't remember it correctly, I can go to jail, right? Isn't that what we're dealing with right now?
Well, it's much more than that, because they lied to investigators in some cases. But having 8 people close to the president, having contacts with the Russians in general, what's going on with Donald Trump and all these people around him? Why is there so much interaction with the Russians? This is really alarming. Nobody has this type of
When you mention about Russians, are you talking about that Natalie lawyer, the lawyer who met with Trump Jr.?
No, I'm talking about Donald Trump with his business dealings. I'm talking about Donald Trump with his meetings with Putin. I'm talking about
but there's nothing.
Donald Trump Jr. meeting with Russians and trying to get information that'd be helpful in the campaign.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That Trump Tower meeting. You were talking about the Trump Tower meeting. First, I want to.
But there's a whole bunch of different things. It's not one item. It's a compilation of a multitude of people having different types of relationships with the Russians in the context of the campaign and the government that are just unnatural and are really disturbing.
To me, I think the whole thing started because it was all fabricated by the Hillary side. I've been telling you about that. I mean, I've been reading a lot of articles regarding the Russia collusion thing. The Trump dossier, I think it was fabricated by the opposite side. Fusion GPS got $13 million, and they made this fake fabricated dossier that Trump did some kind of crazy golden shower and all that. I think that's entirely fabricated, but they needed that to spy on Trump campaign, Carter Page. So I think that was fabricated on that front. And they say Russia hacked the computer, the DNC, and also John Podesta's server. So there's a company named CrowdStrike. I don't know whether you know it, in Irvine here in Southern California. So I don't know why, but DNC somehow did not give that server to the FBI. They gave that server to CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a very pro-Hillary company. If you look at the board members, they gave a lot of donation money, contribution to Hillary camp. And Eric Schmidt is also one of the board members, and he's a huge, pro-Hillary person. I think he wanted some kind of seat there. So this company said Russia hacked. I don't believe this company. I think the FBI should verify it, and some other American intelligence. We have good intelligence national agencies here. Why do we have to rely on what CrowdStrike has to say? So that's, secondly, that one. And all the people that you said indicted, so they indicted 13 Russians. I think they attended the meeting. They countersued Robert Mueller. Let's see what happens with that. And also Robert Trump Jr. meeting Natalie, I forgot her last name. Her last name is so long, the Russian lawyer. Mm-hmm. She was accepted here to the United States because Loretta Lynch gave her a special visa. It wasn't like, they kind of, colluded behind and, the Trump people tried to bring that Natalie girl, the Russian lawyer here. It was Loretta Lynch, the former Attorney General, the former AG, who permitted to give a visa. So she came here. The day before she met with Trump Jr., she met with Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson. And after the meeting, she also met with him again. So to me, it seems like it was all a setup that makes it sound. So they actually couldn't find Trump colluding with Russia. So they made this thing up. They were saying to themselves, they were panicking and saying, hey, we got to make this narrative real as it gets. So let's make it all that way.
So what Donald Trump Jr. lied about that meeting. He lied. He changed his story constantly. Each time you talk to him,
think he's going to get charged?
There are more people in that room. First they were talking about adoption, then they changed that. Mm-hmm. First there was only he and one other person in the meeting. By the time they're done, there's like 8 people in that meeting. But let me ask you the same question.
Okay.
If this comes out and say yes, that there was questionable engagement between the Trump organization and people around him and the Russians, and that there is a cause to take action, will you accept that?
If Mueller reports that, yeah. I mean, first, it has to be very specific about why they came to that conclusion. And if they come to that conclusion, that Trump campaign, to me, it sounds like it's not that is not the case, because already NBC, mainstream media has been reporting this report will be very anticlimactic. So to me, it seems like it's not heading that way. Yesterday, there was a reporter, the Hills reporter, John Solomon, he reported that it's going to pretty much come out as no collusion. So I don't see it go down that way. If they do decide to announce that way, then probably, let's see what it says.
It could be things that are different than collusion. It could be just all types of different illegal activities that should have been reported.
We're talking about perjury, right?
Maybe more than that. I think the big issue we're going to determine is whether or not the Donald Trump organization violated campaign laws by continuing to negotiate on the Trump Tower in Moscow at a time when he was campaigning, and he didn't disclose that. So, but I think one issue that both you and I will probably both have an issue with, that if the Attorney General does not release the report...
You're talking about 100% fully.
Well, there may be things in there that
you have to redact
that they have to redact because of national security. But if they in general release the substance of that report, where we can look at that evidence and make our own determination, I will be much more persuadable. If the only thing that we see is the Attorney General's summary of what's in that report, I already don't have confidence in the Attorney General, because he's already made statements that I think disqualify him from having an opinion. If he doesn't,
you said you believe him over Jeff Sessions or other Attorney Generals, though, because he plays within the box.
Well, I think Jeff Sessions also kind of played within the box too. My issues with him are
Andy
more
McCabe,
political.
seems like he's out of his mind. Did you watch the Andy McCabe, the former FBI director and acting director, he came out on The View and 60 Minutes?
I thought he made a very compelling case, and I thought he was very credible.
But when he mentioned that Jeff Sessions was out of his, he pretty much said that, he's crazy. He met all the attorney generals, but he have never seen a person like him. I always told you, the biggest mistake that Trump did was appointing Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. I think that was the biggest mistake he made.
Well, I think Jeff Sessions was one of the worst people that we
He's the
ever
worst,
had in
yeah.
the U.S. Senate. He's a racist. He is an ideologue.
I don't know whether he's a racist, but I mean, I just don't see that. I don't know about that.
In the Republican caucus in the U.S. Senate, he was an outlier. But I mean, he was. He was
playing within the box.
He's still. I mean, he was still.
So do you put William Barr a little bit better than Sessions? I do.
Yeah, I do. I do. But I'm concerned about William Barr because prior to him being nominated for Attorney General, he made comments about the investigation and about what he.
Probably because he knows all about this back in and out of it. You know.
This is before he was back in government. He made comments that I think disqualified him. He was rendering an opinion as to what was happening before he had any evidence, which means that, in my mind, that he has a predetermined outcome in view on this case. It remains to be seen, but I don't want to prejudge things. But based on what he did in the past, I'm a little bit nervous, and based on the fact that he has the ability to restrain what information we see, concerns me.
To me, I think this whole mess started because Jeff Sessions is a very gullible guy. I think he's so stupid. I mean, with all due respect to former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, former Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions, I don't think he is really that smart enough to handle this whole thing. And that's why I think he recused himself. He should not have recused himself. He had nothing to do with Russia. When he met with those diplomats, wide open, it wasn't like a secret meeting. He should have said that, oh, I forgot about it, but that is not big enough for me to recuse this case. Because he recused, I think these swamp creatures like Rod Rosenstein, Peter Strzok, and all these people concocted this whole Russia collusion thing, and I think they're going to all go down. You know, I think Rod Rosenstein, he's going to resign in the middle of March. I think he's going to go down. There's going to be a countering. There has to be a counter investigation. I think Rod Rosenstein will go down. I believe Peter Strzok. I think James Comey will, and I think Andrew McCabe. He's already indicted. Isn't he indicted for perjuring himself? And Andy McCabe. He's being investigated. He got fired because he lied in Congress. That's why Jeff Sessions let him go. You know that, right? So these people, they're all crooks in my mind. They're all crooks. They have to go down. And I think probably the Mueller report might include that. Probably not. Oh. You know, but you know what I can promise you? I think after this Mueller report comes out, to me, I don't think they're going to find any collusion there. And after this, Trump has been waiting. You know, the declassification of the FISA document about how his campaign been spied by the Obama administration. I think it's going to all the way. I really think it's going to go up. It might go up all the way to Barack Obama because between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, they've been texting back and forth, and they've been talking about that these things. POTUS wants to know every single moment.
I think it will go back to Obama because I think what is going to come out is they're going to determine that the Obama intelligence operation discovered that Donald Trump was engaged in inappropriate conduct in relations with the Russians. And I think they're going to, and I think there is going to be a calling, but I think it's going to be exactly the opposite of what you said. Rod Rosenstein, who I'm not a political supporter of, but I think he has conducted himself with professionalism on this case.
But how can you say that when he wanted to invoke the 25th Amendment? You know, the 25th Amendment, you're supposed to die or mentally
but wait a second.
Paralyzed.
I think the national discussion over that is absurd. The only people who can invoke the 25th Amendment are members of the cabinet. So that was not even within
You think
his
it was
authority.
a joke?
I think it was a conversation. It would be like you and I going to have coffee and say, how do you get rid of the president? And say, well, you get rid of him by the 25th Amendment. But because you and I spoke about it doesn't mean we can do it. He's not in that chain of command. I think they were talking about things that could be done if the president continued on his crazy path. So it could be that Rod Rosenstein, as the Deputy Attorney General, could have spoken to cabinet members and said, I'm concerned about the president's mental stability. Perhaps you, members of the cabinet, should think about invoking the 25th Amendment. But there was no way that he and McCabe, in their wildest dreams, could have ever invoked that. They were not in the chain of command. Only members of the cabinet and the vice president can do that. So they were simply talking about what options exist in the world as they're chit-chatting if we determine that the president's crazy.
I wish that was the case, but it seems like Andy McCabe, you said he came off truthful, right? It was Andy McCabe who said that Rod Rosenstein was serious, and he just not said it once, he said it twice. And it seemed like even the Gang of Eight, they were also involved in it. I think probably Paul Ryan was in it,
but it doesn't
and these people were in it.
But
it's crazy.
It doesn't matter what.
This is a swamp. This is a deep state.
The entire country could talk about the 25th Amendment. We're allowed to talk about it. Those two are people who are high in government. They're allowed to talk about it. That doesn't mean they can do anything about it. It's not within their authority.
But what about Rod Rosenstein talking about wiretapping? You know, wearing a wire and record secretly the president. Isn't that kind of crazy stuff? I mean, we're talking about territories that we can't even imagine during the Obama or Bush administration.
If you listen to what McCabe said, he said based on the information they had gotten, they were genuinely concerned that the president of the United States might be a national security interest from his connections to.
Yeah, because he's not one of the establishment. They wanted one of their boys to go there.
No, he was doing what FBI people do. They're investigators. They see a potential national threat. Their job, their duty, is to investigate it. Talking to Rod Rosenstein, he also expressed concerns and said that if we have to investigate, it's possible I could wear a wire. Then they would be doing their duty to all Americans and to law enforcement to ensure that this country is protected against foreign interference.
I would say this: if this happened to Obama or a Democrat president or one of the establishment president, there would have been a huge outcry. There would be fireworks all over Washington, D.C. But because it's Trump, they're saying, oh, this is a norm. It's okay. You know, I mean, we're all supposed to hate Trump. You know, that's the narrative I think the media is pulling out. I think this is insane.
I think it's just the opposite. They held Obama to a much stricter standard than they ever do Trump. And Trump gives people lots of reason.
Nobody talked about 25th Amendment.
Because nobody thought Obama was insane. People think that Trump is insane. Legitimate people think that this guy is unbalanced.
So if we think about 25th Amendment happened because John F. Kennedy got assassinated, and that's when they put that in the Constitution. I mean, but if you read it, the 25th Amendment, it doesn't say the person is insane. They say if you're incapable or dead, then you know you go to the next line, like for Mike Pence or probably the House Speaker.
Well, not dead, because if you're dead, the Vice President takes over or the next one. But the 25th Amendment establishes the line of succession and changed the line of succession. But the 25th Amendment is exclusively reserved for a very small group of people.
Yeah.
The Vice President, the members of the Cabinet. Anybody else chatting about the 25th Amendment is irrelevant. There's nothing they can do about it. They can't invoke it. And that's why that conversation between McCabe and Rosenstein was irrelevant. They were just talking out loud, their senior government people saying, we got a crazy guy in charge. What do? We think he's colluding with the Russians. We'll have to investigate. If things really look crazy, the 25th Amendment's available, and maybe the cabinet will do it. But that's not a coup. You can only use a coup if you have the ability and the motive in order to execute it.
So the Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman, Lindsey Graham, the senator for South Carolina.
He's not intelligence. He's judiciary.
Judiciary. Sorry. So the chairman, Graham, he said that he will subpoena all of these people and try to get to the bottom of it. Do you think he's doing an overkill here?
No, I actually hope he does, because I think if he subpoenas Rosenstein, if he subpoenas McCabe, and they tell him what was happening, I don't think that tells a very good story for the president. I think when you have somebody, Rosenstein has been in government, Republican administrations for decades. He was considered a meat and potatoes sort of.
James Comey's a Republican, but I don't think he's pro-Trump, though.
Well, he's not. I don't think he is either. But
there's a lot of, there are tons of Republicans, especially in Washington D.C., the swamp, that hates Trump even to this day.
Mueller is a Republican. Comey's a Republican. McCabe is a Republican.
I don't think they're pro-Trump, though. I think they're all anti-Trump.
They're not pro-Trump, but they were in government positions, observing things that were coming out of the Trump campaign and the White House. And they were having conversations about what they've seen in the context of their jobs. And if they reveal that information before the Senate Judiciary Committee, I think Lindsey Graham is going to be really unhappy that he subpoenaed them, because they're going to give a perspective from Republicans on why they think that the president is unbalanced.
Okay, and there's another Korean American. We talked about it, Bruce Orr, the former number 4 guy in the Justice Department. It was known. I mean, this is reported by The Hill that Bruce Orr's wife Nellie Orr, who worked for Fusion GPS, that she was making actually a separate dossier about Trump. And according to the Judiciary rule book, husband and wife shouldn't be working together like this. She's been benefiting, getting paid by Fusion GPS, but she has given that information, another Trump dossier, to Bruce Orr. Do you think this is crazy thing, or do you think it should be okay?
I don't know anything about this case. I'd have to go
it's just
to comment.
Okay, but let's see what happens next week. Do you think it's going to come out next week, or is it CNN? Is it another CNN fake news?
I hope that it comes out. I think
you're tired of it too, right?
I think we're all tired of it, and I think we need to have good information so we can make our assessments and move on.
Yeah, I think it's exhausting. I think this is really exhausting. I hate talking about actually the Russia collusion thing. I've been talking about it since 2016, right?
I don't think it's going to be a good report for the president. It may not be as severe of a report as
Clinton,
as opponents are hoping it will be, but I have a feeling it's not going to paint him in a good light.
Got it. Okay. So, well, that's our show for today. Our show is not about left or right. It's about right or wrong. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you.